How you guys doing?
I'm doing good.
Super great.
I'm super pumped about this.
Good. We are too. We've been looking forward to this.
The crazy thing is this secret history of Twin Peaks has like almost nothing to do with Twin Peaks. So
Right. Yeah. Yep. Like how Twin Peaks is it? That's what this is.
yeah, exactly.
I have very few stats about the book.
Oh, Pat stats?
I have Pat stats.
The official Pat Stats. You could have been anywhere in the world tonight, but you're here with us. Pat Stats. Haul out your boy for some Pat Stats.
Written by Mark Frost, co-creator of Twin Peaks. It was published on October 18th, 2016, and published by Flatiron Books. Those are my Pat stats.
All right.
So Mr. Ring, can I call you Mr. Ring?
Sure.
Mr. Ring, did you tell us about your experience with Twin Peaks? Like, when did you first start watching the show?
It was a couple years after it aired, 95 probably. The show was over in 91. Firewalk with Me was out in 92. And by like 94, I was, 13, 14, starting to get into cool music and movies, and, I could go rent rated R movies and things like that. So like,
Game changer.
yeah. So like, I had a cool Spanish teacher, and she was like, "Oh, you like all these movies? You should check out Blue Velvet." So I checked out Blue Velvet. I thought that was cool. And then this, like, back in the day when we had record stores, like I went to this record shop or CD shop, and this cool guy behind the counter was like, "Oh, hey man, you ever seen Twin Peaks?" And I'm like, "The show that got canceled?" I was like, "That looked kind of cool. And didn't they make a movie or something?" And he was like, yeah, but you were talking about Blue Velvet. Like, that's David Lynch. Like, he made a TV show. And I was like, "Oh, really cool." I was so pumped. I ran next door to the video rental store, and they only had Fire Walk with Me. They didn't have the pilot. And I was like, I'm going to get this. He was like, "Well, it's a prequel." He's like, "Yeah, screw it. Go ahead and get it." So I watched Fire Walk with Me first.
Oh no.
On one hand, like it spoiled it. But I think that like I knew through like osmosis that maybe, who killed Laura Palmer. So it spoiled it. But on the other hand, like that's like pure heroin David Lynch, So it was just like, I was just like, what? So it blew my mind. I saved up got my Christmas bonus at work, and I went and bought the whole box set. So
The VHS?
The VHS box set. So I basically like binge watched that whole thing in like 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I wore the tapes out. I watched the whole series so many times. But anyway, that's my Twin Peaks story. Basically, 2014, everything started to turn around. So you had hardcore fans that had the DVDs, but 2014, you saw the entire Mystery Blu-ray set, which was the first physical release of the missing pieces, which people like me had been waiting for 20 years.
Right.
And
Can't imagine.
And yeah, I think 2014 is also more or less when it started hitting streaming. So the physical Blu-ray set came out, releasing the missing pieces and Firewalk with Me in that box set, and it started hitting streaming, and this was all just a slow ramp up to the return.
Yeah.
And then you had this book came out like 6 months before the return. So that's what we're about to talk about is its own thing. I am super curious. I wrote some notes down, and everything is all questions for you guys.
I have no answers.
How did you hear about the book? When did you pick it up? Was it Patrick? Was it after the return? Did you read this? You just read this recently, right?
Yeah, well, no. So the audiobook I'd read recently because I did throw that tweet out on the Talking Backwards because you responded. You were like, "Yeah, get yourself some bourbon and sit back and read it, and listen." And that's what I did, and it was great. Yeah, I did not actually read I've read it a few times, but I didn't read it until after I watched The Return. Because my experience with Twin Peaks was, I was late as well. I watched it shortly, I knew about it coming back, and I watched the original series on Netflix right before The Return, so I did kind of watch them back to back. And I loved it, but for whatever reason, the book kind of flew under the radar for me. I kind of hate that, but obviously there are things I can pick up on after seeing The Return. It's still great. We started doing this podcast because it was Dave's idea probably this time a year ago to do this podcast. And I mean,
Thanks,
I was
Dave.
all in. I was all in for sure, but I remember, I told these guys, I was like, you have to get this book. I'm pretty sure they got it before. Well, Dave, you probably got it, like 6 months ago? But you didn't touch it until we got finished with Fire Walk With Me.
Right, well, you sent it to me as a wedding present, I think.
Oh, that's right. That's
So
right.
it would have been almost a year ago.
Wow,
And
yeah.
you gave
Kenny
me,
loved that.
well, I was given express instruction not to read it until we had seen Fire Walk With Me, and I hadn't seen it yet.
Yeah.
And I actually didn't see it up until we were about to do the episode for it.
Yeah, so you're in a unique spot too, where I had you, because I don't think I realized all of that as well when we started watching, because you were just over last summer, and I was like, let's watch some of The Return, because I knew you'd watch Twin Peaks, but I was like, let's just start watching some of it.
Yeah.
And now apparently I keep seeing posts on Reddit and stuff, this book is popping up at like Dollar Trees and like other like wholesale outlets for like $1, which I just think is so funny. Just imagine someone walking up in a Dollar Tree being like, oh, the secret.
Hell yeah.
It's only $1. I was joking with Tyler. I was like, we need to go pick one up and just all of us autograph it and devalue its worth to 30 cents and just give it away.
I guess it's like, who are these people?
We host a
won't know.
podcast about Twin Peaks.
And thanks for the cheap book, but why? Why do this?
Yeah, why?
This book in 30 years will be just like the Access Guide and the Laura Palmer Diaries, and they'll be selling for $100 on eBay.
Or the freaking board game.
Yeah, I'm trying to get the board game. He gets outbid at the last second every time.
I pushed my bid. I lost this week. I was up to like $102. And in like the last 2 seconds, I went for $150, and I was so angry and relieved.
Ridiculous.
Little background on it. So they put out the physical media in 2014, the box set. I think it was 2015 they announced that it was happening, that they were doing The Return, or they were doing more Twin Peaks. So then after they announced that they were coming back, then Mark Frost came out, said, oh, there'll be an accompanying book. They both wrote the show. Lynch will direct the show, and Frost is coming out with a book. I was like, oh, awesome, that's cool. And it was called The Secret Lives of Twin Peaks. And the original press release, or the original interviews, it was going to catch you up on what all your favorite characters from Twin Peaks had been doing from the original show leading up to The Return, the new Showtime thing.
Which is not what happened.
No.
That's what I wanted.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people did. And they probably, I mean, if that was something that was announced, I'm sure there was some disappointment.
To be honest, like I was super excited because the Blu-ray box set had come out, and I was like, oh yeah, Twin Peaks, like I seen it all, and I wasn't even gonna buy it because it was kind of expensive when it came out. But my parents got it for me for Christmas because they remembered that I loved it so much. So I spent like my whole holiday rewatching it, kind of like falling in love with it again, and seeing Fire Walk With Me in HD on Blu-ray. I mean, I just was like in heaven, right? So I kind of like 2014, like, got me going again. Then they were going to make some more, and I was all excited. So then when the book actually came out, it's like, oh, I guess it's called The Secret History. Okay, you order it, pre-order it, whatever. Then it comes, and you read it, and you're like, what the hell is this? I'm sure there were a handful of fans that were like, oh my God, it's amazing. The book is amazing. It's mind-blowing, whatever. But like, me and everyone I know that read it was just kind of like, what the hell is this? Like, there's hardly anybody from Twin Peaks in it. How is this leading up to anything?
Why have we spent an entire chapter on Lewis and Clark?
This is like a history textbook from high school. I had bad luck with this book, so I ordered it, pre-ordered it. I got it from Amazon or somewhere, and the jacket was torn. I sent it back, and then I got it back. That jacket was torn. So they sent me another one. Jacket was torn again, and I'm like, look, if this wasn't Twin Peaks, I wouldn't give a crap. But like, if I'm gonna buy a hardback book for the first time in 5 years or whatever, like, I don't want it to be torn up or whatever. So I sent it back. I said, screw you guys, I'm gonna go buy a physical copy. I went to every bookstore in town, no one had it. And then it was gonna take like 2 weeks to get it, or like even longer for them to get it. So I just went back to the Amazon or wherever, ordered it again, and one came and it wasn't torn. I said, thank God. All right. So then I sat down to read it. I was not feeling it at all. I think it was probably a month later, probably, by the time I got a copy that wasn't damaged and was able to sit down and do the whole thing. And when I started reading it, when I was like, this is going to be a difficult read. And then I realized, oh, it's like a dossier. It's like I got all these pictures and cool stuff. And then I heard that the audiobook had some actors and whatever. I'm like, I'm going to listen to the audiobook while I'm reading it. Just sit on the couch in the living room and go through all this. And I think I did like 3 or 4 sittings. I did through the whole thing. But now I love it, and it's like my favorite thing at Twin Peaks almost. Anyway, that's my history with it. I'm dying to know, like, first impressions. What'd you think? Are you ever going to read it again? Were you miserable the whole time, or?
These guys have listened to the audiobook more than I was able to do it, and I was intending to listen to it at least twice, but I think these guys got through it 2 or more times. Yeah. So I'd like to hear what they have to say too, since they're really fresh.
At my job, I had the opportunity to listen to a lot of things just through headphones. I pretty much have headphones in from the time I clock in until I clock out. So I was able to.
Your boss isn't listening.
They all know. If you don't have headphones, you would go crazy at my job. I listened to it over the course of about, I would say, a week. Just kind of did it in about 2 to 3 hour chunks, just to kind of take a moment to kind of absorb what I'd heard and mull it over a little bit. For the first few chapters, I had no idea what I was dealing with. Like you said, it was like a big history lesson. And I'm not great with history, so I don't know how much of it was retconned and how much of it was actual fact. Like, TP can verify as much as she wants, but I don't know if that's for the book or if that's actual history.
Verified. TP.
There were a lot of names getting thrown out, a lot of locations. It was very Twin Peaks in that it was a huge information dump. Even though you've heard about things like the Lewis and Clark expedition, you've heard a little bit about Native American tribes and how they were removed from their land. And a lot of that is in there. And there's, like you were saying, there's not a lot of Twin Peaks in it. It's kind of everything that leads up to what ultimately happens in the series that you know. So I honestly zoned out for chunks, just like 30-minute chunks, because they were just talking about military tactics and like covert movements. So a lot of that wasn't really jiving with me, and it really took a while for the ball to get rolling for me to start picking up on names just like Andy Packard, like Andrew Packard as a Boy Scout.
Yeah, right.
Scoutmaster Milford? Then I was in. I was like, I'm here for this. I want to know what these people were up to in their youth, and this is bananas. Because then we get into like alien abductions and like visions and like symbology and how history kind of mixes with what people perceive as aliens or ghosts, and how just through time everyone's always had a different name for things. Like even just different countries have different names for the same theology. Yeah. But like when all that started coming into play, that's when I started texting the guys. It's like, guys, this book is wild.
That was my favorite reaction. Yeah, when you sent that, I was like, okay, good. I was like,
it's like once we got out of like what actually is necessary, like those things, those little historical things that they made work and tie into the greater Twin Peaks universe, I super appreciated, and were very cool that they were there. But that wasn't the hook for me. It took kind of trudging through that to see how this was going to work out in the big picture of things. Because once we got to how these things are just on the border, or may have leaked through into where everything in the TV universe was happening, that's when it started looking like something very interesting. There's a lot to talk about, a lot that I'm really excited to touch on too, so it's good.
So I started listening to this book. I got outside and started mowing the lawn. tossed it on, and about 10 minutes in, I
Toss it right off.
I was just like, I'd rather listen to the lawnmower. I had no idea. I didn't understand. Like, Patrick, you tried to prepare me for kind of what it was, but even then, like, you did a terrible job.
I'll admit that.
Yeah, thanks.
How can you prepare someone for this?
We don't even know what this is.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, I started listening to this book, and it was kind of, I mean, of course it was weird, because again, I had no idea why we were talking about any of this stuff, you know, and even going, I really didn't pick up on much of anything until, like you said, Dave, like Dougie Milford got introduced. But then even then, like, I was having trouble getting into it until it got to like actual Twin Peaks stuff. Like, once it got into familiar territory, I was like, all right, I can dig on this. Like, my retention level is 0. And so, like, if I don't know what you're talking about, I'm not really gonna remember it, which is why I had to listen to it so many times. But that first listen was just like in one ear, out the other.
That got to be a major issue for me, is where it tried to be like, let me teach you about these different organizations and what they do. And I, in my brain, said no. I didn't learn this, and now is not the time.
Yeah.
So it definitely takes a few passes to really take in everything that's being posited to you. It's so different. It's such a different medium. And I'm so thankful that there's an audio version, because reading through it is a task, because it's where do your eyes go?
Exactly.
You have these pages with handwritten scribblings that I honestly have a really hard time with anytime somebody does that. I can't read that. So like
that was one thing I really appreciated about the audiobook. Was that, you know, just like with
definitely a huge help.
I feel like it. I don't know how it didn't take Mark Frost 25 years to put this thing together. When you're flipping through it, you're like, is this what he's been doing? Is this what he's been working on? Because, like, especially if you're saying that he did the secret live, like it was announced as the secret live, something changed at some point, and he still got this done in like a year, which I don't understand how that's possible. I realized that he was probably using this as an excuse to throw in all the stuff that he likes, like UFOs and conspiracy theories and politics, and like, I get that, and he was just having a field day, like incorporating the Twin Peaks universe into this, which I respect him for it. It's awesome. I don't understand how this didn't take him longer.
So I have a theory about that. One is, you're right, he was asked in an interview how long this took. Okay. Because someone posited the same thing. Like, would this take you like 20 years? And he said, no, this took me a year. So basically, when they were done writing, Frost went to do the book, and David went to do the probably pre-production and the shooting, like that kind of stuff. There's a couple of like caveats that I'm speculating about. One is, this is kind of like you said, like, this is crap that he's been into his whole life.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not like he just woke up and was like, I'm going to incorporate all this.
Like, you can't do that.
He knows who people is. He knows Lewis and Clark. He knows all this stuff. Jack Parsons, all this stuff is, not all of it, but like a lot of that history, Mark Frost knows this stuff. The other thing is that I believe, personally, could be stretching a little bit, I believe that a lot of this was discussed during the writing of the show. There is stuff in this book that, based on context, like, there is no way that some of this stuff was not discussed between Mark and David. So I know that David Lynch has not read the book. However, there are things that David Lynch says and does in The Return that directly reference this book. So, like, where did it come from? Did they separately make up the same stuff? No, of course not. Like,
that's why I get frustrated too, because people will say, you know, oh, he didn't read the book. It doesn't mean anything. And I get so like frustrated that I'm like, you don't realize like how important Mark Frost is, like, to Twin Peaks. Like, people just like to just write that off. Like, no, it's all Lynch.
Yeah. David Lynch didn't even read The Secret Diary of Laura Palmer that was written by his own daughter at his direction. And The Secret Diary of Laura Palmer, to some people, it's the most important thing in Twin Peaks. It's the most personal, it deals with the most trauma, people being abused, et cetera, et cetera. You can't just throw these books. You can say, hey, I only watch the show. I'm not going to read the books. I respect that. But if you're like, I am a diehard Twin Peaks fan, and I think Twin Peaks is the whole universe, but it's only David Lynch, and the books are garbage, and it's like, no, like, sorry.
Those statements contradict themselves already.
Yeah.
Real quick on Dave's point, when he was talking about how different this is, like, it's important for people that might be watching this for the first time or haven't read the book, like, I've never read anything like this. This is not a standard novel or
It's not a novel.
It says
the cover
on
says
the
a
cover
novel.
says a novel.
It is random.
Not one bit from the first page. This is not a novel.
Yeah. The same way that The Return is not a TV show.
Right.
What is
This is not a novel.
Right.
Like, this is not your standard stuff, is what I'm saying. The same way that The Return is not a standard TV show. This is a perfect complementary piece because this is not a standard novel.
It's such a great companion piece for world building.
Yeah.
And just as an idea, like for something like this to exist, you typically don't get these kinds of books unless they're spread across several installments. What it took, like the Buffy the Vampire Slayer universe, 20 comics to wrap up their story and get all the backstory. And this is a single book that gives the smallest quirks about characters an explanation. Something you never get in Twin Peaks ever. You get some answers in this book. Not for the questions that really matter, but
Yeah.
Like, what has everybody been doing in the last 25 years?
like
Yeah.
Jacoby's whole Hawaii fetish and the reason for his 3D glasses, it's explained.
Yeah.
He grew up in Pearl Harbor. He doesn't experiment with the left and right brain and how it perceives information. And that's why he does it. I don't know if they already had that in mind when they were dressing him like a maniac or if this is retconned information. But the fact that they made it work either way.
Even the pilot, he's got doesn't he have a hula? Like, there's a hula girl, like on the.
He's got a hula girl type.
That's like
Yeah.
the very first scene with him.
Hippie eye. I would love to see the show Bible for Twin Peaks. I mean, I'm sure it's hieroglyphics, but I bet it's just crazy.
Oh yeah, we need to talk about this.
I keep one of these in my copy of the book.
I noticed there were some weird images.
There's a lot of 3D stuff in the book, yeah. I don't know if you guys have a pair of 3D glasses lying around.
Not on me, man.
There's a handful of images that if you have these little glasses, it kind of separates them. There's a picture of Leland.
And Bob, yeah.
Bob kind of superimposed on him. So if you look at it through these glasses, like if you close one eye, he disappears.
Oh, cool.
So the book's got a bunch of cool little stuff in there.
There are Easter eggs and secret messages in this book.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot. I want to talk about one. I mean, I realize we haven't really even just started with the content, but there's one Easter egg that's bothering me, and I may just be really, really dumb and I can't figure it out. But I've read this in in 2 different places. I've read this. The pages where it shows the books. Mm-hmm. There's a secret message there, but it mentions something about a mirror. If
you notice, the archivist, his trusty typewriter is broken. The number 1 is broken. So he uses the capital I. So every time there's supposed to be a number 1, it's a Roman numeral I. The first book, Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail, that's number 1. Number 8 is Cooper's pick. It's the Warren Commission report. And then this is Double Indemnity. And it's number 11, which is II. 8, and I. So the idea is if you look at this in the mirror, Roman numeral I reversed looks the same. Number 8 reversed looks the same. So if you looked at this in the mirror, it would make those 3 books stand out because all the others, the numbers are backwards and they look weird. First word of this book is fear the double. So fear the double is the hidden message.
I'm out.
They've left.
Bye. Sorry.
I love it. That's fascinating because he even says in the first paragraph of that page, doesn't it say something about a mirror or mysteries or? It
says the first line is much can be learned in unexpected places. And then it says the library at the bookhouse is unique resource. And then at the bottom it says, good literature is a mirror for which we see ourselves more clearly, and it's clear to see that the people of Twin Peaks have experienced many a twisting turn of fate.
And while we're here, James Hurley's favorite book?
Who cares?
Charlotte's Web.
Charlotte's Web.
James Hurley's favorite book is Charlotte's Web.
So cool.
Is it,
I think it's because he's
like 4 years old.
sensitive.
Perpetually.
I just need something broken down for me of like the first couple of chapters, just kind of like condense it and just why is it important? Because I never really picked up on why this was necessary, other than it was in relation to the general area of Twin Peaks.
It's the ring.
Yeah, the ring.
Oh, right. Yeah,
It's all about the ring.
It's hard to explain because I don't know what it's setting up. I mean, 90% of that Lewis and Clark stuff is absolutely true. And then there's like, oh, we found this secret journal page where somebody in the party found some natives that traded him this ring.
I also thought too the missing page was just sort of a nod to just Laura's missing pages too. You know, those being like missing pages that were lost or whatever. It just seemed like more of that kind of stuff.
Okay, so like this page, for example. So Meriwether Lewis had the ring, right? Supposedly, right? And then he was killed under suspicious circumstances, which is 100% true. So Mark Frost is working in that perhaps the man who killed him stole the ring. Now this is Meriwether Lewis's apron, and this is the Masonic Lodge stuff. So there's hints that the Freemasons versus the Illuminati, who have that symbol of the owl, and the Freemasons are kind of like the more democratic, and the Illuminati are more authoritarian. And so there's this underlying theme: the two lodges, the Masonic Lodge and the Illuminati is like the whatever their lodge is called. There's all this groundwork that whatever you want to call it, like good versus evil, secret societies, backstories to the lodges.
Let me kick a scenario to you. The nurse that takes the ring from Annie, is she possibly a distant relative of Meriwether Lewis trying to get the ring back in the family?
I doubt it.
Fantastic.
All right.
That's fantastic.
You shut it down, that's fine.
No,
That's been addressed.
This is Twin Peaks. Anything's possible. Anything's possible. It's tough because it's like you said, like just sum up that first 100 pages because it's all like history. Like I don't get it, and I'm like, I don't get it either. All I can tell you is like what's in there. Every page has something on it that's like, could this be something? Is this on purpose?
Yeah, it definitely feels like everything in here is very intentional. But I think the big thing to glean out of this first sort of collection is that through these historical letters and encounters, we're led to believe that the Nez Perce, the Native American people of the area, had convened with white giants before there were ever white explorers in the area. From these giants, they got this ring, which is what Meriwether Lewis gets in a trade with them. So when they mention having interacted with white people, it's almost like, well, that's impossible unless they came from somewhere that nobody knew about. We also get a lot of talk about something called sky people and other spirits. And I think it just kind of sets the groundwork for this universe, like where this town is, all stemmed from something that's been here before people even were. It's not Lovecraftian so much, but it's definitely like an eldritch presence. Like whether it's from space or just this supernatural energy that's in the planet, that origin isn't really there. But it's just saying that something was here and something interacted with these people long before people were out exploring. They encountered it because it was just there. And that continues to permeate everything from there forward.
That's the best explanation of the first chunk of this book I've ever read.
The secret history of talking backwards.
The abridgment.
Verified. TP.
James so much.